Thank you, Reverend Mata, Reverends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Uncle Brendan for the welcome to country, and I also acknowledge all Indigenous people present and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And this time next week, my friends, our country will be making an important choice. And to me, the choice is very simple. If we were writing the Australian Constitution today, in 2023, would we ignore 60,000 years of history and stewardship of this country when writing our most important governing document? Would we provide a voice to their parliament for the most disadvantaged group in our country, to walk with us as we seek to eradicate that disadvantage in our country? The answer to that is yes, we would. If we were writing the Constitution today, we would do that. And this time next week, we have the opportunity to right that wrong. This discussion is not over. It won't be over until 6 o'clock on the Saturday night. I'll be handing out how to votes from 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. I'll be asking for every vote in my community. For those of you who are able to, I ask you to keep fighting and talking to undecided voters until 6 o'clock on Saturday night, because this is an opportunity our country cannot, and I'm hopeful and confident will not miss to right this wrong. Well, my friends, I also want to acknowledge my friend Penny Sharp, the New South Wales Minister for Climate Change and Energy. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing as a country, but I want to say at the outset, this is not something that the federal government can do alone or that governments can do alone. We have to be all in. And the federal and New South Wales government are all in, working together. And the states across the board, and local government, and society, and communities, and unions, and industry, and all of us have to be all in on this massive transition. So it's wonderful that you can be with us today, Penny, and also Mark. Budagig, in America they say Burja. I do. And in Australia we say Budagig. Mark Budagig, also a member of the New South Wales Parliament. Well, I'm here today for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as Mata said, I did promise to come back. So here I am. Also because, to be very honest with you, I remember very well when we last met in Penrith. It was in the middle of the federal election campaign. It was an evening function. It was my 15th or 16th event of the day. I was a bit tired when I arrived. But I left with more energy than when I walked in. So I had a feeling that the same would be the case today. And here we are again, and you haven't disappointed or surprised me. But I'm here also to give you an update, a progress report on some of the things we discussed 18 months or so ago. And I want to say at the outset that the things I'm going to talk about, I am pretty pleased with what we've been able to do so far. I'm pretty satisfied with what we have been able to achieve. But it is just simply the beginning. We have so much more to do. We have a task in front of us which is enormous. What we are doing is managing the biggest economic and environmental transformation our country has ever undertaken, and we are trying to do so in a very short period of time. So we have an enormous amount of work ahead of us. But let me give you a brief progress report on what we have been able to start work on since the election. And what we are planning to do over this next period, because we do not have much time to waste. This next decade, in particular this next 7 years, is the key to whether we hold the world as close as possible to 1.5 degrees of warming. And as you know, every small little increment over 1.5 degrees makes a massive difference around the world, but particularly in our beautiful part of the world, the Pacific. And 2030, the year that we judge ourselves on, is now, that we're in October, just 74 months away, which is not long at all. So, what are we doing and what more do we need to do? Well, firstly, when we came to office, our country was planning to reduce emissions by 26% by 2030. We asked the Australian people for a mandate to change that to 43%. And the Prime Minister and I notified the United Nations that we had changed to 43%. And then we passed a Climate Change Act through the Parliament. It wasn't easy to do, but it was important to do, to send a message to the rest of the world, to invest in Australia, to help us on this massive transformation to renewable energy, and that has happened. That was, in many senses, the easy part. A target is easier set than met. We can all set targets. We can all set targets about what we're going to do, how we're going to look, how good people we're going to be, but achieving those targets is the harder part, and that's where the really hard work begins. So let me just touch on a few things. Firstly, the electricity we all consume. When we came to office, 33% of the energy we consume as a country came from renewable energy. We need to turn that 33% into 82% by 2030. That is not a small task. It's not easy to do. It's absolutely essential, and we are doing it. Hovering up now, much closer to 40%. But still, that's a big task ahead of us to get that to 82%. To do that, we need to put more renewable energy on our roofs, in our lands, off our shores, to generate what we consume as a country. We need to get that energy around Australia. That means building new transmission lines. Not easy to do, but necessary. We need to store that renewable energy in batteries in our houses, in batteries in our communities, in batteries in big batteries across our grid. And we are doing that as well. We've started. We've opened the first community battery. We have 399 to go. But we've opened one so far, and there are more coming quite soon. And we have big batteries being built around our grid, and we are encouraging household batteries as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So this is the task we have in front of us. But then we have tasks as households as well. And I know this is a topic of concern to you, that many households need help to make this transformation. So in the budget, we allocated $1.7 billion to help businesses, small businesses, households, local governments make the transformation to renewable energy. $1 billion through low interest loans, $300 million to work with state governments on social housing, public housing, because some of our public housing is some of the oldest stock in Australia. It is not often energy efficient. It isn't provided with those opportunities. So we have that to do. And then we have transport. We have to electrify our transport. When we came to office, 2% of cars sales in Australia were electric. It's now 8%. But the world is at about 20%. So we have a lot of catching up to do as well. We cut the taxes on electric vehicles, which is what's driven that big change, but we have more to do. You know, there are 2 countries in the world, 2 major countries, don't tell car manufacturers to send electric vehicles to their country. Australia and Russia. The only 2 countries. I say to manufacturers, why don't you send more electric vehicles to Australia? Give people more choice. They say, Minister, because you don't make us. Well, we've said we'll fix that. We'll change that, and we're going to introduce those rules, and we'll have more to say about that quite soon. But this is what we have in task, and I want to just spend a few minutes talking about what we are doing around the world as well, particularly in partnership with the Pacific. This is not my first Talanoa. I was at a Talanoa a few weeks ago with the Pacific Climate Ministers, where we talked about what we can do together when Australia and the Pacific jointly host the Conference of the Parties, the COP meeting, if we win that bid, as I'm hopeful and confident we will, because I can't think of a better opportunity to put the concerns of your community, the concerns of the Pacific, on the world's agenda. And that Talanoa, where we sat in Suva a few weeks ago with the climate ministers, the Prime Minister of Tonga, who graced us with his presence, the Deputy Prime Minister of Fiji, who showed huge interest in our work, and all the climate ministers came together. And just yesterday, our government announced we will rejoin the Green Climate Fund. The previous government took us out. This isn't good enough. We need to be part of the conversation, but I don't mind telling you, and telling you very bluntly and frankly, when I discussed with the Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund whether Australia would rejoin, I said, we will only rejoin if you promise me you will work better with the Pacific and spend more money in the Pacific. And so we decided to rejoin, to be at the table, to argue for more for the Pacific, as well as putting in a contribution ourselves. And also the Prime Minister will have more to say about working with the Pacific when he goes to the Pacific Island Forum in a couple of weeks' time. He's very strict, right? I've got so much more to talk to you about. But he'll have, the Prime Minister will talk more and announce more, building on what we've already done, increasing our aid budget, particularly for the Pacific, and saying 80% of it must be spent on climate-related activities. 80% of our aid budget now. And in the Pacific, that means working, okay, well, I got the message. Working on adaptation to ensure that the Pacific has every support it needs. So my friends, I'll finish where I began. We have so much more to do. This is not the end. It is not the beginning of the end. It's the end of the beginning maybe, but it is only just that. We are only just warming up. We're only just warming up because the world is warming up too much. Thank you very much.
Start by acknowledging the Wangal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and extend my respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I am proud to say that this was and always will be Aboriginal land. A very warm Pacific greetings to you all. My name is Moananu Lepai Masina Rosaline Parker. I am a migrant to Australia and was born in Tamaki Makaurau, Aotearoa. I have been blessed to have been raised here on Darug land in the Western Sydney area. I work as an intensive therapeutic care caseworker in the southwestern Sydney area, and I am a proud daughter of the Pacific and have been actively working with our communities here in New South Wales. I am one of the New South Wales Pacific Linkers, and I work alongside many groups such as the Young Pacific Women's Collective, PPN Mentoring Program, Whānau Samoa New South Wales, and Matawai Pacific Cultural Arts. Last November, I had the privilege of attending the inaugural Pacific Australian Emerging Leaders Summit in Canberra. This was the experience of a lifetime. I attended the summit with other passionate young people from different parts of Australia and the Pacific Islands. We spent 4 days in Canberra where we had the opportunity to participate in political training workshops, educational and cultural activities, and meet with members of Parliament to share our climate concerns at both local and regional levels. The summit was truly inspirational and equipped me with skills and knowledge to help me in my frontline work and climate campaigning. The issue of climate change is very dear to my heart. It affects every single person on this earth in more ways than one. I see this through my work in the disability and mental health spaces. As a person living in Western Sydney, I'm heartened to hear of new job and training opportunities as part of the New Energy Apprenticeships Program and the New Energy Skills Program. Minister, I sincerely hope that a fair proportion of these opportunities are presented to the young people of Greater West and South West Sydney. Such opportunities give our young people the ability to thrive and make positive changes in their lives. But I can't ignore what is happening in our homelands. As a young person in the Pacific diaspora and a young woman of Oceania, the impacts of climate change are detrimental not only to our island homes, but also to our identities. The best way for me to describe the loss of culture from climate change is by using this Samoan proverb, which literally translates to, when there is no language or culture, darkness descends on the village. And the impacts of climate change in our region have terrible flow-on effects, such as water and sanitation access, education and youth unemployment, self-determination, and economic inclusion. It is heartbreaking to know that the Pacific region is suffering due to the effects of climate change, even though we have contributed the least to it. I hope we can work with you for climate justice. Whaakitai te rela.
Over many years to bring about lasting sovereignty, stability, security, and prosperity of all Pacific countries and people, or what we call today Pacific Valley of Family. And the questions around what is Pacific Valley really looks like. As one of our main development partners, we look to Australia on decisions on various issues, such as the phase out of fossil fuel, deep sea mining, and the recent development on the dumping of the Fukushima waste into the Pacific Ocean. What is security and stability when our communities are forced to relocate, to go further to get catch for daily survival? We continue to put interest in coal, oil, gas ahead of the health and safety of our people and creation, the well-being of our people and creation. The Pacific has been at the forefront of climate change, intensifying of weather patterns and so forth, loss of biodiversity, but we are the least emitters of carbon emission, but are most vulnerable in that sense. And we call on our main development partners as Australia, are you willing, as part of our family, to phase out of fossil fuel, to lower your carbon emission? What steps are you taking as part of our family to intentionally support and help us in the various struggles that we have as specific communities, as small developing states, and so forth? So, yeah, I look forward to see concrete development, concrete actions taken to see the well-being of our Pacific communities. Thank you.
From Asigaila and Kukalga Nation, Central Torres Strait, Zenith Case. I am one of the traditional owners of Masi. What's happening here in the Torres Strait is we are facing erosion and inundation, which affects all the low-lying islands and even the hilly islands of the Torres Strait. It affects the way we live, our traditional culture, our belief. Saddest thing is that the government came a few years ago and told us that we will have to be relocated to the mainland, where we don't know. Our fight is to remain on our islands, to practice our culture and our tradition freely, and not to be refugees in our own country. So we urgently need seawalls, especially for the low-lying islands, which to help slow down the inundation and erosion. The government gave us a certain amount of money to make seawalls, but that money had to be distributed within all the islands, and we only get the crumbs. What we really need is the whole loaf of the bread and not the crumbs. So our fight is in solidarity, and we really want, to join our hands with the brothers and sisters in the Pacific and the mainland Aborigine and fight against fossil fuel, that they reduce the emission down to 1.5 and keep fossil under the ground. We all stand in solidarity with our Pacific brothers and sisters. HILIAU.